The weight of attention. Caden Wells stood in the center of the crystalline ballroom and felt the weight of 100 eyes pressing against his skin. The embassy tower stretched 30 floors above the glowing streets of Tharos Prime, and tonight it hosted the most powerful families from 3 neighboring star systems. The celebration marked 5 years since humanity had established formal relations with the Galactic Assembly. Caden had arrived on this world as a junior translator. Now he served as the primary liaison between Earth's government and the Assembly Council. The promotion had brought prestige and resources. It had also painted a target on his back that glowed brighter with each passing month. The ballroom reflected light in ways that human architecture never could. The walls themselves seemed alive with shifting colors that responded to the emotional temperature of the crowd. Right now they pulsed with shades of amber and deep crimson. Caden recognized those colors from his training manuals. They indicated competition and desire. The air smelled of exotic spices and ozone from the energy barriers that protected the open observation deck. Music flowed from instruments that had no human equivalent. The sound vibrated through his chest cavity and made his heartbeat adjust to match the rhythm. It was disorienting and intentional. The hosts wanted everyone slightly off balance tonight. Caden tugged at the high collar of his formal suit. The fabric was woven from Veltorian silk that cost more than his annual salary. It had been a gift from Sylvaine's family. Wearing it sent a message to everyone in the room. He was claimed property. The thought made his jaw tighten. He turned toward the refreshment stations that lined the eastern wall. He needed water and 5 minutes away from the suffocating attention. A figure stepped directly into his path before he completed 2 steps. The leopard's claim. Sylvaine moved with the fluid grace of a born predator. Her species had evolved on a world with twice Earth's gravity. Every movement carried controlled power. Her fur was pale gold marked with deep brown rosettes that formed hypnotic patterns across her shoulders and arms. She wore traditional Veltorian formal attire that left her arms bare and displayed the clan markings etched into her skin with bioluminescent ink. Those markings glowed faintly in the dim light. They announced her bloodline to anyone with eyes to see. She was 4th in line for leadership of the Sunspire clan. Her family controlled the primary trade routes between the Assembly core worlds and the outer colonies where humanity had established its foothold. She placed one hand on Caden's chest. The touch was possessive rather than affectionate. Her retractable claws pressed lightly against the silk fabric. Not quite breaking through but making their presence known. You were about to leave the central platform. That would be inappropriate given the circumstances. Her voice carried the purring undertone common to her species. Caden had learned to recognize when that sound indicated pleasure versus warning. Right now it was definitely a warning. I need some water. The crowd is intense tonight. The crowd is supposed to be intense. My family elders are watching from the upper gallery. They expect a formal bonding announcement before the twin suns rise. We discussed parameters last week. I made my position clear. Your position is irrelevant compared to political reality. You need protection. The ambassador cannot shield you forever. Earth's influence in the Assembly is fragile. My family offers stability and resources. We can elevate your status beyond anything your own species could provide. All you must do is stand beside me when Elder Torvan calls for declarations. Caden felt frustration building in his chest. He had come to Tharos to build bridges between civilizations. Instead he found himself drowning in power games that treated him like a commodity. He opened his mouth to establish firm boundaries. Another voice cut through the music before he could speak. It was sharp and carried the authority of someone accustomed to immediate obedience. The wolf's challenge. Release him, Sylvaine. Your desperation shows like blood in water. The crowd parted instantly. Rhenna strode through the gap with military precision that made even civilians step back. She belonged to the Wolferen species. They had provided the majority of the Assembly's military forces for 3 generations. Her fur was silver grey with darker guard hairs along her spine that rose slightly when she was agitated. They were definitely rising now. She wore her dress uniform decorated with commendation stars from border conflicts that Caden had only read about in classified briefings. A plasma blade hung at her hip. Wearing weapons to a diplomatic function was technically forbidden. Nobody had the courage to tell her to remove it. She stopped precisely 3 feet from where Sylvaine held Caden. Her amber eyes flicked from the possessive hand on his chest to his face. There was calculation in that gaze. She was assessing his emotional state and physical condition simultaneously. Go howl at the moons. Caden and I are having a private discussion. There is nothing private about cornering a human in public view. You embarrass yourself and frighten him. I am not frightened. I am annoyed. Both women ignored his protest completely. My pack has defended human settlements since the Crovar raids. We have a blood oath that predates your family's sudden interest in diplomatic marriages. If anyone has earned the right to stand beside Caden, it is those who actually bled to protect his people. You offer brute force. I offer wealth and political influence. He is a diplomat, not a soldier. He belongs in the high towers, not your muddy training compounds. He needs security that extends beyond your pack's limited territory. The observer's silence. Caden pulled away from Sylvaine's grip while they were focused on each other. He took 3 steps backward until his shoulders hit the edge of a support column. The structure was cool against his back through the silk shirt. He watched the 2 women circle each other like the apex predators they descended from. This was not about him. Not really. He represented access to Earth's growing influence and the resources humanity brought to the Assembly. Whoever secured a formal bond with him gained leverage over Earth's future agreements. His actual feelings were irrelevant in their calculations. The realization cut deeper than he expected. He had known on an intellectual level that interspecies politics were complicated. Experiencing it as the object being bartered felt entirely different. He needed air. He needed space to think. He pushed away from the column and moved toward the observation deck doors. The crowd seemed to sense his distress. They created a path without him having to ask. Maybe they found his discomfort entertaining. Maybe they simply recognized when a prey animal was about to bolt. He reached the edge of the main room where the crystal walls gave way to open air. The night breeze carried the scent of Tharos vegetation. It smelled like cinnamon and ozone. A movement near the wall caught his attention. A woman stood partially hidden by a decorative plant display. She was smaller than Sylvaine or Rhenna. Her fur was deep russet red that darkened to almost black at her extremities. Her species was Kethryn. They were known for intelligence rather than physical prowess or political power. She held a data pad against her chest. She worked in the embassy archives. He had seen her during his research sessions but never really noticed her beyond professional interactions. She was not looking at Sylvaine or Rhenna. She was looking at him. Her expression held none of the hunger or calculation he saw in the other women. There was only quiet concern and something that looked like sympathy. She noticed him watching her. Instead of approaching or making demands, she simply nodded toward a service entrance half hidden behind a tapestry. It was a way out. An escape route that nobody else seemed to be guarding. She was offering him freedom without asking for anything in return. The choice ahead. Mira. He spoke her name quietly. She tilted her head slightly in acknowledgement. Her large ears swiveled toward him to catch his words despite the music. She made no move to approach or stake a claim. She just waited to see what he would choose. Behind him, Sylvaine and Rhenna had escalated from verbal sparring to physical posturing. Their voices rose above the music. Other guests were starting to gather around them. This would become a spectacle soon. Possibly even a challenge fight if neither woman backed down. His presence was the fuel feeding their conflict. Caden looked at the service entrance. Then he looked back at Mira. She had not moved. She was not demanding he choose her. She was simply offering an alternative to being consumed by the power games swirling around him. The contrast hit him with surprising force. Everyone else in this room wanted to possess him or control him. This quiet archivist just wanted to help him breathe. He made a decision. He moved toward the service entrance with quick, determined steps. Mira fell into step beside him without a word. She keyed her security credentials into the door panel. It slid open silently. They stepped through into a maintenance corridor lit by soft blue emergency lighting. The door sealed behind them. The music and arguing voices became muffled. Caden leaned against the cool metal wall and took his first full breath in what felt like hours. "Thank you. I did not realize how badly I needed to get out of there." Mira studied him with those large observant eyes. "You looked like a man drowning. I know what that feels like." Her voice was soft and lacked the predatory edge he had grown accustomed to hearing. It was refreshing and terrifying at the same time. He was in a deserted corridor with a woman he barely knew. She had just helped him escape the most powerful families on Tharos Prime. There would be consequences. "You just made yourself a target by helping me. Sylvaine and Rhenna will not forget this." Mira's whiskers twitched in what might have been amusement. "I am already invisible to people like them. Archive workers are beneath their notice. They will forget I exist within a day. But you should not return to the ballroom tonight. Do you have somewhere safe to go?" Caden thought about his apartment. It was embassy property, but it would be the first place anyone looked. "I'm not sure anywhere is safe right now." "Then I know a place. Come with me." She started down the corridor without waiting for his agreement. Caden hesitated only a moment before following. Behind them, muffled through layers of crystal and metal, he heard someone shouting his name. The hunt had begun. Hidden Sanctuary Mira led Caden through a maze of service corridors that he never knew existed. The embassy tower was larger than he had realized. The public floors where diplomats conducted business represented only a fraction of the total structure. Below and between those elegant spaces ran networks of maintenance passages, storage areas, and staff quarters. The walls here were plain metal without the decorative crystals that adorned the upper levels. Emergency lighting cast everything in shades of blue and grey. Their footsteps echoed quietly against the bare floors. Mira moved with confidence through the passages. She clearly knew this route by memory. They descended 3 levels using a cargo lift that smelled faintly of cleaning supplies and machinery oil. Caden watched the floor numbers change on the digital display. He was now below the main embassy structure in the sections reserved for essential systems and personnel who kept everything running. When the lift doors opened, warm, humid air rushed in to greet them. The temperature difference was immediate and striking. Mira stepped out into a corridor lined with transparent panels. Beyond those panels, Caden saw something unexpected. Plants. Thousands of them growing in organized rows under artificial sunlight that mimicked the spectrum of Earth's sun. This is the Botanical Research Garden. The embassy maintains it for psychological studies on long-term space habitation. Humans apparently need exposure to Earth plants to maintain mental health during extended off-world assignments. Most diplomats never come down here. They prefer the synthesized environments on the upper floors. Mira pressed her palm against a biometric scanner. A section of the transparent wall slid open. She gestured for Caden to enter ahead of her. He stepped through into a pocket of Earth transported across the stars. The garden stretched out in organized chaos. There were fruit trees from temperate climates growing beside tropical palms. Vegetable gardens occupied raised beds next to flowering shrubs that attracted Earth insects bred specifically for this enclosed environment. The air smelled like soil and chlorophyll and growing things. It was the first time since arriving on Tharos Prime that Caden felt his shoulders truly relax. He had not realized how much he missed this. The constant alien architecture and climate-controlled spaces had created a low-level tension he stopped noticing until it suddenly vanished. Stories in the soil. Mira walked along a gravel path that wound between the garden sections. She moved to a small clearing where someone had placed benches carved from recycled ship materials. A fountain made from smooth stones burbled quietly in the center. The water came from the embassy's recycling system, but it sounded exactly like the creek that ran behind Caden's childhood home in Oregon. He sat on one of the benches and felt exhaustion wash over him. The adrenaline from escaping the ballroom was fading. It left behind a bone-deep weariness that had been building for months. Mira sat on the opposite bench. She maintained a respectful distance. Her tail curled around her feet in a posture that Caden had learned indicated relaxation in Kethran body language. She pulled her data pad from a pocket and set it aside. For a long moment they simply sat in comfortable silence. The garden sounds filled the space between them. Somewhere in the trees, Earth songbirds chirped their evening songs. The simulation even included a day-night cycle. Right now, it was transitioning to dusk. The artificial sunlight was fading to soft orange and pink. "How did you know about this place?" Caden finally asked. Mira's ears twitched slightly. "I spend most of my free time here. The archives are cold and sterile. I need growing things around me. My homeworld has forests that cover entire continents. The trees there are tall enough to pierce the clouds. When I first came to Tharos Prime for my academic posting, I thought I would go mad from the isolation. Then I discovered this garden. It is not home, but it helps." Caden studied her more carefully now that they were away from the chaos. Mira had delicate features even by Kethran standards. Her russet fur was marked with cream-colored patterns around her eyes and muzzle. She wore simple clothing without clan markings or status symbols. Everything about her presentation said she preferred to remain unnoticed. It was a stark contrast to the aggressive displays he had endured all evening. "Why did you help me tonight? You could have stayed invisible like you said. Why risk drawing attention?" Shared understanding. Mira was quiet for a moment. She seemed to be choosing her words carefully. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight of experience that surprised him. "Because I know what it feels like to be treated as a thing rather than a person. 3 years ago, I was engaged to a Kethran scholar from a prominent research family. The arrangement was made by our parents when we were children. I believed he cared for me. I believed we would build a life together based on mutual respect and shared interests. Then I discovered he was only marrying me to gain access to my family's library collection. We have ancient texts that date back to the first Kethran space explorations. He wanted those documents for his career advancement. I was simply the key that unlocked the archive." She paused and looked down at her hands. Her claws extended slightly, then retracted. It was an unconscious gesture of old pain. When I confronted him, he did not even try to deny it. He explained very calmly that I should feel honored to serve such an important purpose. My feelings were irrelevant compared to the advancement of knowledge. I broke the engagement. My family was furious. I brought shame on them by refusing to complete the arrangement. They sent me to this distant posting as punishment. I have not spoken to them in 2 years. Caden felt something shift in his chest. He had assumed Mira was simply a kind person doing a good deed. He had not considered she might understand his situation from personal experience. "I am sorry that happened to you. No one deserves to be reduced to a transaction." She looked up and met his eyes. Her gaze was steady and clear. "That is why I helped you tonight. I saw Sylvaine and Rhenna looking at you the same way my former fiancé looked at me. You are not a person to them. You are a resource to be acquired and exploited. I thought you deserved at least one person in that room who saw you as human." The simple honesty of her statement cracked something open inside Caden. He had been holding his emotions in check for so long, maintaining the perfect diplomatic facade, never showing weakness or uncertainty because that would undermine his position. Sitting here in this garden with someone who actually understood, the walls started crumbling. "I came to Tharos Prime because I believed in building bridges between species. I wanted to prove that humans could contribute something valuable to the Galactic Assembly. Instead, I have become a pawn in games I barely understand. Every conversation has hidden meanings. Every social interaction is a test. I cannot remember the last time someone spoke to me without wanting something." Unexpected connection. Mira shifted on her bench. She moved slightly closer but still maintained the respectful distance. "That sounds exhausting." "It is. Some days I wake up and I do not recognize the person I have become. I am so focused on maintaining appearances and not making political mistakes that I forget why I wanted this position in the first place." Mira tilted her head thoughtfully. "What did you want when you first came here?" Caden leaned back against the bench and looked up at the artificial sky. The garden simulation was displaying stars now. They were not quite right. The constellations were generic rather than matching either Earth or Tharos Prime. It was close enough to feel familiar though. "I wanted to make a difference. Humanity is so new to interstellar politics. We are decades behind even the youngest member species of the Assembly. I thought if I could establish strong relationships and prove our worth, It would secure a better future for Earth. I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. His voice dropped lower. Now I am just trying to survive each day without being devoured by people who see me as a stepping stone. You are more than that. Mira's words were quiet but firm. I have watched you work in the archives. You are thorough and respectful with the documents. You ask thoughtful questions. You remember the names of staff members that most diplomats never bother learning. You brought tea to the night shift workers during the treaty revision crisis last year. You did not do it for political gain. You did it because you noticed people were exhausted and thought a small kindness might help. Those actions reveal character. The people playing power games in that ballroom have no idea who you actually are. They only see your position. Caden felt warmth spread through his chest at her words. When was the last time someone had complimented his character rather than his usefulness? He could not remember. He studied Mira across the small distance between them. Really looked at her for the first time. She had an elegant beauty that was easy to overlook when surrounded by more aggressive personalities. Her large eyes reflected the garden lights. Her expression held none of the calculation or hunger he had grown accustomed to seeing. There was only genuine warmth and understanding. Moment of truth. The silence stretched between them, but it was comfortable rather than awkward. Somewhere in the garden, the irrigation system activated with a soft hiss. Water misted down over the growing plants. The humidity increased slightly. It smelled like rain on earth soil. Caden found himself leaning forward slightly. Mira did not pull back. What happens now? He asked. I cannot hide in this garden forever. Eventually, I will have to return to the embassy proper. Sylvaine and Rhenna will demand explanations. Mira's whiskers twitched. You could tell them the truth. That you are not interested in political marriage alliances. That you want to choose your own path. Caden laughed without humor. They will not accept that. In their cultures, powerful families arrange unions based on strategic benefit. Personal choice is considered selfish and childish. If I refuse them directly, I risk damaging Earth's diplomatic relationships. The pressure from my own government would be enormous. Then perhaps you need to present them with an alternative they cannot argue against. Mira's tone was thoughtful. What if you were already committed to someone else? Not a political arrangement, but a genuine relationship. They could not pursue you without causing insult to your chosen partner. It would force them to back away. Caden stared at her. Are you suggesting I fake a relationship? With who? Mira met his gaze steadily. With me. If you want to. It would not need to be real. Just a public declaration that we are exploring a bond. It would give you breathing room to figure out what you actually want. My status is low enough that your government would not object. I have no political ambitions for them to worry about. But my presence would block Sylvaine and Rhenna from continuing their pursuit without appearing desperate. A dangerous proposal. The offer hung in the air between them. Caden's mind raced through the implications. It was a clever solution to his immediate problem. Mira was right that a declared relationship would force the aggressive suitors to withdraw. Assembly customs were strict about respecting existing bonds. But it also put Mira at risk. You would become a target. They would try to discredit you or drive you away. Why would you volunteer for that? Mira's expression remained calm. Because I meant what I said. I know what it feels like to be trapped by other people's expectations. I would not wish that on anyone. If I can help you gain freedom to choose your own path, that seems worth the temporary discomfort. Besides, I am leaving Tharos Prime in 6 months when my archive posting ends. I have been accepted to a research position on Viridian Station. Whatever temporary alliance we create here will end naturally when I depart. Caden felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment at her words. Relief that she had an exit strategy. Disappointment that she was already planning to leave. The second emotion surprised him. He barely knew this woman. Why did the thought of her leaving create a hollow feeling in his chest? He pushed the confusion aside to focus on the practical aspects. If we do this, it needs to be convincing. Sylvaine is not stupid. Neither is Rhenna. They will look for any sign that we are faking. Then we tell as much truth as possible. Mira leaned forward slightly. Her voice was conspiratorial now. We say that we have been meeting in the archives for months. That we formed a connection over shared interests in historical documents and cultural exchange. That we kept it quiet because we wanted to explore the relationship without political pressure. It is close enough to truth that we will not stumble over lies. We have been meeting in the archives. We do share interests. The only fabrication is the romantic aspect. Caden considered the plan. It had merit. The timing worked. The cover story was plausible. More importantly, it gave him a shield against the predatory attention that was suffocating him. He looked at Mira and saw only honest concern in her expression. She was offering help without demanding anything in return. It was the first genuine kindness anyone had shown him in months. That alone made him want to accept. I would owe you an enormous debt. How would I repay you for this? Seeds of something real. Mira smiled slightly. It was the first real smile he had seen from her. It transformed her face completely. You could start by calling me your friend. I have very few of those on Tharos Prime. Most people either ignore me or view me as competition for archive access. Having one person who sees me as more than my function would be payment enough. Caden felt his own smile forming in response. Friends. I can do that. Though I should warn you, I am terrible at remembering birthdays and I have strong opinions about proper tea preparation that some people find annoying. I am Catherine. We invented tea cultivation 3,000 years before humans discovered fire. Your opinions will be charmingly primitive. Her tone was teasing. The playful exchange felt natural and easy. Caden realized he was relaxing in ways he had not managed in months. This felt right. Not the fake relationship they were planning. The actual connection forming between them. Mira was intelligent and kind and saw him as a person rather than a position. That was rare and valuable. The garden lights shifted to their night cycle. The artificial stars overhead brightened. Someone had programmed them to slowly rotate through the major constellation patterns from different assembly member worlds. Right now they were displaying what Caden recognized as the Catherine home sky. Mira noticed his attention shift upward. She followed his gaze. That is Arethel. My star system. The bright cluster to the left is called the Scholar's Crown. Catherine children are taught to navigate by it when we are young. It is beautiful. Do you miss it? More than I expected to. Mira's voice held quiet longing. I told myself that leaving was an adventure. A chance to see the galaxy and expand my knowledge. Some days that is true. Other days I just want to walk through the forests of home and hear familiar birdsong. She paused, then looked at him. What about you? Do you miss Earth? Homesick hearts. Caden nodded slowly. Every single day. I miss the way Earth rain smells. The sound of wind through pine trees. The taste of coffee from my favorite shop in Seattle. I miss my sister's terrible jokes and my father's cooking. I miss being able to walk down a street without everyone staring at me like I am an exotic specimen. He surprised himself with the honesty. He had not admitted his homesickness to anyone before. It seemed like weakness. But Mira's understanding expression made it safe to be vulnerable. We are both exiles in our own way. Sent far from home because of decisions we made or circumstances beyond our control. Maybe that is why I felt compelled to help you tonight. I recognized a fellow lost soul. Mira's words resonated deep in Caden's chest. She was right. They were both adrift in a political landscape that did not really care about their well-being. Finding each other felt like discovering an anchor point in the chaos. When do we make the announcement? Caden asked. Mira considered the question. Tomorrow evening. There is a cultural exchange presentation in the main gallery. It will be well attended but less formal than tonight's disaster. We can arrive together. Make it clear through body language and proximity that we are bonded. By the next morning, everyone in the embassy will know. Caden felt nervous energy building in his stomach. This was really happening. He was about to declare a fake relationship with a woman he barely knew. It was risky and potentially disastrous. It was also the first choice he had made for himself in a very long time. I am in. Let us do this. Mira extended her hand across the space between them. Not a handshake, but the Catherine gesture of agreement where they pressed their palms together. Caden matched the gesture. Her palm was warm against his. Her claws remained carefully retracted. The touch lasted only a moment, but Caden felt the significance of it. They were allies now. Partners in a scheme that would either save him or destroy both their careers. They sat together in the garden as the night cycle deepened. They talked about small things. Favorite books. Terrible food from their respective cultures. Embarrassing childhood stories. The conversation flowed easily without the weight of political calculation. For the first time in months, Caden felt like himself again. Not the perfect diplomat. Just a man talking to a woman who understood him. It was dangerous how much he was starting to enjoy her company. This was supposed to be a strategic alliance. He needed to remember that. Yet sitting here with Mira, watching her eyes light up when she talked about obscure historical texts, Caden found himself hoping their fake relationship might become something more. The thought terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. Tomorrow they would step into the light together. Tonight, in this secret garden, they were simply two lonely people who had found unexpected comfort in each other's presence. Public declaration. The Cultural Exchange Gallery hummed with quiet conversation. This event was smaller than the previous night's celebration. The guest list included academics, cultural attachés, and mid-level diplomats rather than clan leaders and military commanders. The atmosphere was more relaxed. People actually looked at the displayed artifacts instead of using them as backdrop for political maneuvering. Caden adjusted his collar for the third time. He wore simple formal attire without clan symbols or gifted accessories. Mira had suggested he present as neutral. Let his choice of companion make the statement instead. She arrived precisely on time. Caden spotted her entering through the main gallery doors. His breath caught slightly. Mira had transformed from the quiet archivist he knew. She wore traditional Catherine formal robes in deep burgundy with gold threading that caught the light. Her russet fur was groomed to perfection. She had applied subtle cosmetics that highlighted her large eyes and delicate features. She was stunning. But more than that, she carried herself with quiet confidence he had not seen before. This was not someone trying to hide. This was a woman declaring her presence. Their eyes met across the gallery. Mira smiled. It was warm and genuine. Caden found himself smiling back without thinking. He crossed the space to meet her. The movement felt natural. He was not thinking about diplomatic protocols or political implications. He just wanted to be near her. They had spent hours talking in the garden last night. Those conversations had revealed depths to Mira that intrigued him. She was brilliant and funny and kind. The fake relationship they planned suddenly felt less fake than he expected. You look beautiful. The words came out before Caden could stop them. Mira's whiskers twitched in pleasure. You look nervous. Remember, we are simply two people who care about each other. Let that truth show. Everything else will follow. She was right. The caring part was not fake. Somewhere between the garden conversation and this moment, genuine affection had taken root. Caden offered his arm in the human gesture. Mira tucked her hand into the crook of his elbow. They walked into the gallery together. Ripples through water. The reaction was immediate and subtle. Conversations did not stop, but they shifted. Heads turned. People noticed. Caden saw a Veltorian diplomat's eyes widen slightly. A Wolfaran military attaché leaned close to whisper with her companion. Information spread through the room like ink through water. Caden Wells had arrived with Mira Talvesh. They were displaying clear bonding behavior. The implications rearranged social calculations across the entire gallery. Caden felt Mira's hand tighten slightly on his arm. Are they all staring? She asked quietly. Definitely staring. How are you feeling? Terrified and exhilarated. Mostly I'm wondering if this dress was too bold a choice. You look perfect. Trust me. They moved through the gallery examining displays of cultural artifacts from various assembly worlds. Earth had contributed several pieces, including a handwritten copy of Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot speech and an original moon rock from the Apollo missions. Mira stopped before the moon rock. She studied it with genuine fascination. Humans went to their moon before they had proper spaceflight technology. You built primitive rockets and threw yourselves into the void with barely any safety measures. It was statistically insane. Her tone held admiration rather than judgment. Caden laughed. We are a stubborn species. When we decide we want something, we find a way regardless of the obstacles. Mira looked at him. Her expression was thoughtful. I am beginning to understand that about you personally. You decided you wanted freedom from political manipulation. So you found a way. Storm gathering. They were examining a Kethran stellar navigation chart when Caden felt the temperature in the room shift. He looked up to see Sylvaine entering through the main doors. She was not alone. Rhenna walked beside her. The two women who had been competing aggressively last night now moved in coordinated unity. That was a bad sign. They had allied against a common threat. The threat was him. Specifically, his choice to appear publicly with Mira. Sylvaine's eyes found him immediately. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Caden recognized the predatory focus in her gaze. She was hunting. Rhenna's body language was more openly aggressive. Her ears were pinned back slightly. Her tail held stiff and low. Both women crossed the gallery directly toward Caden and Mira. Other guests parted to let them pass. Nobody wanted to be caught in whatever confrontation was about to occur. Caden. Sylvaine's voice was polite but carried an edge like broken glass. You disappeared last night before we could finish our conversation. I was concerned for your safety. I am fine, as you can see. I simply needed some air. The gathering was overwhelming. Rhenna stepped closer. She ignored Mira completely. We need to speak privately. There are urgent matters regarding your security clearance that cannot wait. Caden felt Mira's hand slide from his arm to take his hand instead. The gesture was supportive rather than possessive. Lines drawn. I think any urgent matters can be discussed here. Transparency is important in diplomatic relations. Caden kept his voice level and professional. Sylvaine's eyes finally acknowledged Mira's presence. She looked her up and down with barely concealed disdain. The archivist. How unexpected. I did not realize you had been granted access to events above your clearance level. Mira's grip on Caden's hand tightened fractionally, but her expression remained serene. I was invited by someone with appropriate authority. Her voice was quiet but firm. Rhenna's lip curled slightly to show teeth. This is inappropriate. Caden, you are being manipulated. This female has obviously seized an opportunity to elevate her status by attaching herself to you. She has no resources, no political influence, no family worth mentioning. She offers you nothing but a target on your back from those who would see you properly allied. Caden felt anger flare hot in his chest. That anger had been building for months. Every time someone treated him like property to be claimed. Every time his own feelings were dismissed as irrelevant. Every time someone assumed they knew better than him about his own life. Breaking point. With respect, my personal relationships are not subject to committee approval. I appreciate your family's interest in alliances with Earth. But I am not interested in marriages arranged for political benefit. Mira and I have been seeing each other privately for several months. We chose to make it public now because we are serious about exploring a genuine bond. The lie came out smoothly. It was easier than Caden expected because the emotional truth underneath was real. He did care about Mira. He was serious about wanting freedom to choose his own path. Sylvaine's composure cracked slightly. You are making a catastrophic mistake. My family has already drafted the preliminary bonding contracts. We have negotiated terms with Earth's diplomatic corps. You are jeopardizing agreements that took months to construct. Caden felt coldness settle in his chest. They had negotiated contracts without consulting him. They had treated his future as a commodity to be traded. The realization confirmed everything Mira had said about being viewed as a resource rather than a person. I never agreed to any contracts. Any negotiations conducted without my explicit consent are invalid. This conversation is over. Caden turned to leave. Sylvaine grabbed his arm. Her claws extended slightly. They caught in his sleeve. It was not quite an attack, but it was definitely not friendly. The gallery went completely silent. Everyone watched to see what would happen. In assembly culture, uninvited aggressive touch was a serious violation. Defense and declaration. Mira moved faster than Caden expected. She stepped between him and Sylvaine. Her body language transformed completely. The quiet archivist vanished. What emerged was someone who understood how to navigate predatory social dynamics. She met Sylvaine's gaze directly without flinching. You will remove your hand from him immediately. Your behavior violates basic consent protocols. You are embarrassing your family and demonstrating exactly why Caden chose differently. Sylvaine's eyes widened slightly in surprise. She had not expected resistance from someone she viewed as beneath her notice. Rhenna shifted position to flank them. Her hand moved toward the plasma blade at her hip. That was a mistake. The gallery doors opened again. A new figure entered. Ambassador Chen, the head of Earth's diplomatic mission on Tharos Prime. She was a woman in her 60s with steel-grey hair and eyes that missed nothing. She surveyed the scene instantly. Her expression hardened. Is there a problem here? Her voice carried absolute authority.